Hi, I'm Kyle Smith. I'm the composer of Canticle. It is a setting of the famous text, the magnificent text by St. John of the Cross. And he is one of the great writers of mysticism in the Western cultures. He wrote this. You may know the title, The Dark Night of the Soul. You may have heard that term. Well, that actually comes from him, and that's another writing of his. That and the spiritual canticle, which I'm setting for this work, are all very much based on Song of Solomon or the Song of Songs. And the bridegroom and the bride is a type of the metaphysical union between our soul and what saves us. The complete title that St. John of the Cross had for Canticle is A Spiritual Canticle of the Soul and the Bridegroom Christ. St. John of the Cross lived from 1542 to 1591. It is a great poem of the Spanish language. It's a great poem of mysticism. It's a great religious poem, but I think that people from any faith tradition or no tradition at all have all recognized over the centuries that this is one of the most magnificent texts of this type of mysticism. What is interesting to me, one of the many things of interest to me, is how the stanzas, here 40 stanzas, and they're all the same length. They're all in the Spanish language, all of the same rhythm pretty much. This is in English, and I've taken a number of translations and kind of made my own translation out of this. But it is absolutely glorious. And if you can listen to this while reading the text, I hope you have the program booklet in front of you. My website, kylesmith.com, has the complete text. A couple things that I would touch on. The first thing, the obvious, is that it's for choir, and it's for 3 cellos and percussion. When I was first composing this, I didn't quite know what instruments to put behind it, but the idea of a string quartet of some type kind of morphed into a quartet of cellos, and then I thought, well, over 65 minutes or so of music, that might be kind of a strain on the listener to have, the same kind of instruments playing for that long. And then I came up with the idea of having a percussion. The great thing about a percussionist is that you can give him or her a whole bunch of different instruments, and they can come up with a whole bunch of different sounds, and that gives the ear relief over a long period of time. But what I ended up with was not too many percussion instruments, but a bass drum and a tambourine, and most that you'll hear a lot is the vibraphone, which you can get a lot of sounds out of also. That, with the 3 cellos, I think gives a great deal of elasticity to the sound, and I hope you'll enjoy that musical landscape that those instruments provide. The voices take up the roles of the bride and the bridegroom, but because so much of the text is, in fact, the bride talking, the obvious thing of having, let's say, the women be the bride and the men be the bridegroom became not very workable. So everybody takes on the persona of one or the other, and it follows the text as it's written by St. John of the Cross. And in fact, the breaking up of the text into sections is the same breaking up of the text that St. John of the Cross does. So I follow his lead there. The only other thing I'd want to say is that if you're following the text, because it's a mystical text, sometimes the meanings are hard to get at, and I would say don't worry about that all that much. The problem with setting it to music is that there are so many meanings, you have to decide which one you're going for. At least that was my struggle, my challenge in putting all this together. If I were to set this again now, I think the music would be entirely different because there's so many different ways to get at this text. So don't trouble yourself too much over not getting the meaning. Some of it is pretty obvious. Our soul is always reaching out to union with something greater than ourselves. And I think that's a universal aspect of all of us. And I think if you keep that in mind, what I'm trying to get at in the music will become apparent. I always try to do text painting, that meaning the music will tease out meanings from the text. So if you stay very close to the text, I think that will be a key in what I'm trying to do in the music. One thing that comes up, for instance, is the section that talks about, "O crystal spring, if only on your mirrored surface you would suddenly bring forth those desired eyes which are outlined deep in my heart." Well, I had the picture of a pool and a mirror, so the voices do mirror themselves. There's a rippling that goes on, so I added notes in, so when things are repeated, they're repeated at different time frames. The time frames get longer and longer, so you have the sense of these ripples going out and out at the same time that the mirror is happening. So that's the picture that I had in my mind. There are other things like that going all through the text, and I bring the music back at the end to where it was at the beginning, because in any spiritual journey, we find ourselves going over the same territory again and again. In spite of the fact that we learn things, we keep oftentimes having to go over the same ground again and again. I hope you enjoy the music, and I think you will enjoy the text. I had so much of a joy working on this, and for me, the meditative aspect is very much paramount as I was composing this. I hope it is for you as you listen to it. I do want to thank you, and I do want to thank Richard Hinson and this wonderful choir, the Bel Canto Chorus, for taking this on. I'm so grateful to all of you for singing Canticle. My thanks to you.